There have been certain stories that have been trending on social media relating to certain churches, and I would like to tell my story in relation to those stories. So late 2014, I had started going to a particular church, and at that point I should have been 17 years old. And when I started going to that church, it was a point in my life where I was having issues with my family. We weren't in the best of situations. And at that point in my life, I was a young, vulnerable lady, emotionally and financially. And I should have been 2016. I had gone off to college while I was still going to that particular church. And there was this certain pastor who we shall call Pastor X. He had developed this certain interest in me, which to me seemed like he probably saw the pain I was going through in my life, and he decided that he would help me and he would be there for me. When I met him, I looked at him like a father, because he was a spiritual father to begin with. So as the relationship progressed, there's a time I wasn't going to church as frequent, and he asked me why. And I told him that there were late meetings that I couldn't go to church and then get on a cab and go back home. So he told me that was okay, and he would pick me up if possible and drop me back home. And this had gone on for a certain period of time. But there were certain times when he would talk to me and it would be a little uncomfortable, because it seemed like he was initiating some sort of relationship or hinting towards a relationship. But as a young person at that point in my life, and I was naive, I would say, because why would I think such of a thing of Pastor X? Because he is married, a family man, and a spiritual figure in my life. Why would I ever think such of him? So our relationship continued. He told me I was beautiful. He was there for me. He brought me groceries when I needed them. We just had a spiritual daughter, spiritual father relationship in my eyes for quite some time, until one day we were texting, because we used to talk all the time. And he had told me he had a very tiresome day and his back was hurting. And when he told me that, I was like, oh my God, this man has been nothing but wonderful to me, He has been nothing but a great inspiration and a great person in my life. So I was like, okay, I'm going to book him and his wife at a nice spa, and they're gonna give them couple massages, and stuff they do at spas for people who are really tired, who need to relax their bodies. And in those messages, I had told him that, but he said he did not want that. He wanted familiar hands on his body. And it confused me, because I couldn't really understand the point of him telling me he wanted familiar hands. And he later went on to insinuate that he wanted me to give him that massage. So as I was going through those messages, I didn't know what to do, because I'd never been through such a thing. I decided to forward the messages to someone I'd looked up to in church. And when I forwarded her the messages, she told me, okay, so this is what's happening. I will help you out so that you can turn this person down, because these things do happen to other people. I remember exactly the words she told me. And she told me, oh, you see all these, you think these things don't happen to other people? They do. These senior pastors that you know and you look up to. Okay, this does happen. So it's up to you as the young lady to turn this person down, which we went back and forth, and she was sending me messages that I was copying and pasting to that man because I didn't know what to say or in what way I could respond, because this is someone I'd looked at like my father. At the end of that conversation with the lady helping me, I think he understood and got that message. And we went back to spiritual father, spiritual daughter relationship. And genuinely, he was in my life at a point where I really, really, really needed someone. I needed a father figure. I needed a parent. And he provided all that for me. He saw me when I needed to be seen. He heard me when I needed to be heard. He saw my potential when I felt like no one else was seeing it. And a few weeks, months later, he calls me while I'm at school, and he asks me, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I'm at school." And he says, "Oh, I'll be outside in the next 10 minutes. I just want to get you some groceries." And I was like, "Okay." And we left, and that should have been in the evening, maybe around 18, 19. We drove to Crossroads Mall and picked out a few things for me, and we were now in the parking lot so we could head back to my school. And he sits in this position where he arcs his back and says it really, really hurts, and that I either have to give him a massage or drive his car. At that point, I was wondering how I got myself into such a situation. Why was I trusting someone this much? And the two of us seated in this locked car in a parking lot. I'm far from school. How am I gonna get back if he decides to leave me there? I was terrified and at the edge of my seat. And I feel like at some point, he saw how scared I was. And he decided to drive the car with his back arced, as he portrayed that his back really, really hurt. When he dropped me off that day, I was relieved and I was scared, and I couldn't really understand that this is the point it had reached. This is a man of God I looked up to, someone who was an inspiration to me. Yet he wanted me to put my hands on his waist and on his back. And then what next? After that, I'd stopped going to church for a very long period of time. Until after some time, I was like, you know what? It's just one man. He shouldn't come in between your relationship with God. And now I'm in church after a long time, and he's like, "Oh, sister, what did we learn last week when we had that meeting?" And I answered. And then 10 to 20 minutes later, he calls me to the front and talks about how I'm such a great woman, I'm destined for greatness, and he wanted to pray for me. And he paraded me from one corner of the front to the other while he held my hand and prayed for me. This is a man that really did pray on me because he knew how much I needed a father in my life, yet he took that for granted and tried to ask for more things that I could give. And after that Sunday, I decided to disappear from church again. Because this time he was low-key doing it in public. He didn't care, because everybody was going to look at it as innocent as it was that Sunday. But to me, it was not. It was a man who was holding my hand that had no business holding my hand because of the things he had been asking from me previously. And I decided to stop going to church for another long period. after months, I decided to go back to church again. And this time he asked if he could give me a business proposal. And I was like, okay. He's obviously gotten the message. And I think this time he did get the message. I was invited to his house. His wife came by and left, and they both didn't really show up for some time, and I decided to leave. And later on, we did try a business venture together, but after some time, it was just a little awkward and uncomfortable for me. So throughout this whole period that I had known this man, at some point there was a story going around about him paying for certain girls' fees, rentals, and it led to stories that they were romantically involved. And this is a married man and a pastor on top of everything. So one day he tells me, oh, remove your DP, my WhatsApp DP, because it is inappropriate. And I told him to go take that advice to that other girl. And he completely denied even knowing her or even knowing that name. But after that conversation, he stayed away from me because I think he knew that I knew what type of man he was. And that was a man he was not supposed to be. The stories of them being together, there were eyewitnesses that had seen him driving out of her place at awkward times in the night. And it is at this point that I realized that there was a pandemic in that particular place I was in. There was something wrong in that church because now there were other stories of other girls that were in college who he had been seeing. It really turned out to be that he was a predator that preyed on young women in college or just young working women and provided a shoot from them and later asked them for more than just platonic relationships or spiritual relationships.